Welcome to The Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on The Alignment Show. And a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the universe. Glad that you're with us once again here on The Alignment Show. My name is Don King. I will be your host, and I am so looking forward to our conversation with our guest this morning. If you've seen the promos that we put out, I said he's one of the people that I fanboy over, and we've already talked about that, he and I. We've had a good conversation already, so we're hoping we can remember some of that stuff for when we are live. But as we're getting started today, let me remind you of a couple of things. You hear us talk on here frequently about people like Bob Berg and Jeff West. They are having an event coming up soon. I'm going to put a QR code up on the screen for folks who are with us on video. They have an event that's called SalesWise Live. And that's coming up June 2nd through 4th down in Florida. And remember that they have a book that they put out recently, a business parable. Bob, as a lot of you know, is the co-author of The Go-Giver. And he and Jeff together wrote a book called Streetwise to Saleswise. Very good book that we recommend. But this event that's coming up is designed to apply those principles in a real world setting. Again, you know both of them. If you listen to the show much, you know that they are all about service. There is no manipulation in their approach to sales. And so this is just a heart-centered way of serving the needs of the world. Also want to remind you that I've got a book out. Just came out a couple of weeks ago, really. This is, got to find it here. Oh, where's my own book? Well, there it is. Okay. Medium Well, second book in the Sparklight Chronicles. It continues in a way the story that started in The Way of the Three-Year-Old Why. I finally got a hold of some print copies myself yesterday. So I encourage you to check that out. I hope that it is not only entertaining to you, but also inspiring and will help you on your own journey. The subtitle is The Journey from Believing to Believing in. And that's all the significance there. So we will be sharing more about that later, but right now I am pleased to be able to introduce you to someone that in a way I've known for years, but he's never met me before. You know, that's the way it is when you're internet famous, well-known writer, people get to know you. Kevin Tumlinson, I'm going to do a little more intro, Kevin, than what we had first talked about there. I first heard Kevin doing commercials for Draft to Digital on Joe Penn's podcast, the Creative Pen. And just as I listened to his voice, I said, this is somebody I would like to get to know. And then I've learned that he's done all kinds of cool stuff along with the writing. Now, here's the official bio. He is the writer, and this is one of those things he and I really connect on. As far as core identity, I think. He's an award-winning and best-selling author of hundreds of books crafted to inform and inspire, educate and entertain in the service of God and humanity. Kevin travels the world, writing from anywhere, finding inspiration among the wonderful people he encounters. Now, here's the thing. He sent me an official bio that is much shorter than that. I wanted to share that because when I asked him, what is it that you do? He says, I am a writer of fast-paced, hopeful fiction. Oh, just so much there. And Kevin, I don't know if you've heard any of the previous episodes I've done. This is a much longer intro than I usually do because there's just so much there that intrigues me. Welcome to The Alignment Show, Kevin.
Thank you for having me on, Don. I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Thank you.
I get the feeling that you and I could probably talk for hours. And
that is yeah, that's another thing I'm known for sure. To go on and on, talk for hours for sure. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, and just as a little thing, I figured out not too long ago that you're in Austin, Texas, and
Yeah.
Austin is one of my favorite cities. I
Yeah.
used to go there every year for a conference. I don't know if you know NISOD. You know, it's a higher education conference.
Mm-mm. Um, that does sound familiar. People don't know this, but I actually have a master's degree in education and taught for several years. And so I do have some exposure to that kind of stuff, but that's
Okay,
not
yeah.
one I go to or have gone to in quite some time if I ever went at all. So
Right, right, and
yeah,
probably wise, but NISOD is this national conference, big impact conference, especially among community colleges.
yeah.
But I'm on the cusp of retirement, and
Hmm.
last time I was in Austin was 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm finding out all these cool people that live
Yeah.
in Austin, Texas, including
Yeah.
you. And now I'm not sure I'll ever be there again. But the Burger Bar, you know, right
Oh
there on
yeah.
Congress Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's famous. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm new to Austin. We moved here. I guess I'm trying to think of the exact date. It was like 2022
uh-huh.
um, when we built a home here, and actually north of Austin, kind of closer to Georgetown, Texas, and so that's kind of what I call home. But the um, we had traveled here quite a bit. You know, you may know the story. I mean, we were before we came here, we were full time van lifers, traveling the whole country, and just settled on like that was. I always joke and say that was like the world's longest house hunt, because we were trying to figure out like where do we fit, where do we want to live, and we were from Texas. My wife is her family's from Colorado originally. She was actually born in Texas. She had a whole expat thing, but I was born and raised in Wild Peach, Texas, and we lived in Sugarland, Texas. Texas has all the most interesting names.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah,
Austin, we fell in love with Austin. I'm definitely embracing Austin, and it's become kind of a mecca for uh, the self-publishing world. I mean, there's so many of us here. I interviewed Johnny Truant on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he lives here along with Sean Platt and that group. Yeah, it's a lot of
yeah.
us.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other names that I recognized of people living there. A lot of them are from the speaker community.
Yeah.
I don't know, since you've just been there for a couple of years, you may have come across the name of Tom Singer. Tom
Hmm.
runs the Austin. It's a tech
Yeah.
not corporation, it's a nonprofit, but he's a professional speaker, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of the professional speaking community
Yeah.
that is there in Austin. So,
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, it's a very eclectic. I've really fallen in love with it. And I'm going to be honest. I didn't particularly like Austin for a long time because I was a Houstonian.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're born and bred to sort of dislike Austin. But truthfully, I mean, the funny thing about Austin is this is the second time I've had an address in Austin, and the first time I had an address, an apartment that I split with a good friend of mine, and I never set foot in it for an entire year. The only time I ever set foot in that apartment was the last day of the lease. Uh, you can blame that on a girl. My girlfriend at the time freaked out because I was leaving and moving to Austin, and so I stayed. But I
Yeah.
had committed to helping him because he was going through massage therapy school at the time, uh, and couldn't have afforded that apartment on his own. So I stayed behind, lived with my grandparents, and paid my rent every month on time to make sure he could get his education. So
Uh, in a way that doesn't surprise me because you strike me as being very um, uh, serving, caring for people. Um,
that's yeah. I hope so.
yeah, yeah.
I hope people see me that way because that is absolutely how I want to live. All right, and how I've tried to live. There's certainly been times in my life where I let myself and let God down on that kind of thing.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
no,
It's
that's my yeah. That I made the commitment, and that's
And then you carried through on it. Yeah.
I carried through because because it was my friend, for sure. But I, I, I like to think I would have done it even if that was a total stranger that I
Mhm.
had, I don't want to leave people in the lurch, So
Yeah, yeah. It's a learning process.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
all a learning process. There are so many things here. You've already mentioned one of them, the van life thing,
yeah.
which I didn't know about you until relatively recently.
Mm,
But then I thought, okay, you're a writer, and we're going to come back to this multiple times. Writing seems to be core to your
that
identity,
is, yes.
and thanks to technology, it is possible to do that from anywhere.
Yeah.
So, how long were you guys on the road? And I'm curious how that affected you as a writer.
Oh,
Meeting different people,
you've
different
asked a loaded
places.
question, Don.
Oh yeah, well,
Loaded question.
they're all loaded somehow.
We were officially we were on the road for 3 years, um, traveling as much as we could manage. It was the joke really is that it was this was how we spent our COVID vacation,
Yeah,
um, when the world shut down, but it was by accident because we were the day that we handed over the keys to our apartment that we were renting. We had sold our house. We had done this before, by the way. We had done a full-time RV life in a big
mm,
motor coach. And so this was like a downsizing thing. But between the RV life and van life, we had a really nice apartment in Sugarland. And we had just, closed it out, handed over the keys, had everything packed in either storage or at that time it was a small bumper pull camper. We eventually got the van like a couple of months later, but um we were done with all that, and here came the announcement that they wanted everybody to kind of shelter in place, and so all the campgrounds and things that we were relying on shut down. Grocery stores and restaurants and all the things we were going to need to survive were uh, you know, prohibiting people from coming in. So, for about 3 months, we had to kind of rough it in her, a spare bedroom of her parents' place.
mm.
Not 3 months, maybe a month or two. But then we got on the road and we traveled and went and did all the things that we could possibly do. That whole social distancing thing, man, we took that to heart. We were in the middle of you know, literal nowhere. Sometimes could not get more socially distant. I think unless we were on a different planet, and just really enjoyed it. But the impact it had on my writing, travel has always had a huge impact on what I do and what I write. A lot of my stories involve an exploration of the world around that character. A lot of the places we visited have become parts of the books that I write, especially the archaeological thrillers. I yeah, it was it was fun. It was interesting. It was compelling to do it that way because
Mm.
every day we could be in a different place, and you know Kara is aware of my obsession with writing. As she says, it's the air I breathe. She knows that's what I got to do. So our priority was always like, even if we were like on a really fast jaunt trying to get from a point A to point B kind of thing.
Mhm.
Every day she knew I got up, I did my routine, I wrote for, a certain number of words, and then we could pack up and get moving. And so that was the rhythm of it. And I produced probably like 6 books while we were in the van. Probably maybe more because it's kind of hard to quantify that sort of thing when you know, when you're just continuously writing. Like, sure, I published maybe 6 books while we were in the van, but I probably wrote like another 3 or 4
Yeah, they're at different
in that
stages of
time.
production.
Yeah, yeah. That's why it's always hard for me to tell people how many books I have, because there's different numbers. There's the number you can count on like Amazon, which falls a little short of the number of books that actually exist,
Mhm.
and that have been published, which falls very short of the number of books that have been written.
Yeah. You've got some back there that you wrote and then decided not to publish, I would assume.
There are some, yeah. Not many. Over the years, I've done these little redemption races to go back into a book that I had written and set aside. I'm not one to do that. I mean, I wish I was. I wish I was like Stephen King, where I had like, he's got, rumor has it, and I have it on very good authority. I know people who know him direct. I'm like 1 degree away from Stephen
Cool.
King, and still haven't met him. But I've heard on good authority that he has an actual room in his home that is just brimming with manuscripts that have never been published.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, well after he's gone, Stephen King will still be producing work. And I wish I were, like that. But
Well, there's the whole J.D. Salinger thing, where you just
yeah,
don't intend for it to be published. I
yeah,
think in On Writing, he talks about some manuscripts that he got 2/3 of the way through and couldn't figure out how to get the characters out of it. And,
yeah.
that's one of the, um,
And if Stephen King is listening, I have a proposition for you. Hand me any book that you started and didn't know how to finish, and I will quote co-author that book with you and finish that book because I feel confident I could do an excellent job with those.
very cool. Yeah. And I don't doubt it a bit. I know you, obviously this is not primarily a writer show. We have a lot of writers that come on the alignment show. Just
Yeah,
by nature of being a writer, I think you confront your values, and
yeah, yeah.
if you do any kind of writing at all, you have to do things to bring your life into alignment to honor that.
Right.
But still, we do talk about writing process a lot of times on here, and you're more of a pantser, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so is Stephen King, of course.
Yeah,
So comfortable with not knowing, and
yeah.
I think that's one of those things that we can bring from the writing life into life in
I
general.
agree. I
Um,
agree. As a matter of fact, today, so I do this thing every day called Three Pieces of Wisdom
mhm.
that comes out of my like morning journaling, and I do a little post every day on social media. That's what today's theme was the idea that change and uncertainty are actually these hopeful things. Change and uncertainty uh, allow you to consider like the unlimited, unregulated possibilities of life. Like we fear change, but we should really feel much more fear the lack of change because if something is unchanging, it means it's dead.
Yeah, very
And
good observation. Yeah.
yeah, so that was today's whole theme was like change and uncertainty are actually avenues for hope, and
Hmm.
we should rejoice in those. We need stability. We need things that feel reliable to us, but we should never fear change. And uncertainty is uncomfortable because we worry about the future. But the thing the way I phrased it and framed it was, when you are dwelling on the past or yearning for the future, it means that you're not experiencing joy
Yeah.
now. And I've lived my life that way quite a bit. So I'm slowly moving the lever to, get a little more centered.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that. Folks have known me for a while. We have a severely disabled daughter,
Yeah.
and it's a very rare chromosomal disorder she has. So there is no medical database that will
Yeah.
give any kind of predictability. So she has taught us to make your plans, but hold them lightly because they're going to change.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the other day with the writing thing. You and I both know people who are plotters.
Yeah.
Um, Although it's interesting, every podcast, and I listened to several of them, every podcast, when they ask the writer, are you a plotter or a pantser? Almost inevitably, they say, oh, I'm a pantser.
Yeah.
So I don't know where all these plotters are. I know one or
They're
two.
out there. I've talked
Yeah.
to quite a few. If you followed me at all, I've talked to a lot of writers, and
Yeah.
there is a kind of mix. It's interesting though because what I've noticed, Don, is the ones that say I'm a plotter. when you really start talking to them and ask them about their process,
Mhm.
all they're really doing is kind of putting some general beats on the page, and
Yeah.
then they are improvising between the notes. And I contend that we're all pantsers
Yeah.
when it comes down to it. It's just that some of us need the life jacket more than others.
Yeah. I think the term is plantser or something like that,
A
but
plantser
yeah,
or a plotster. A
there we
plotzer?
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
son, whatever it
yeah.
is. But even among those, getting outside of writing a little bit, my son really does not like change and wants to know what's going to happen and all this
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think even those writers who are plotters, we recognize that in life, we're all
Yeah.
pantsers.
Yeah.
I mean, we think we know what's going to happen. That's about the time that God decides, let's stir things up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
those changes are man, that discomfort, like we lock onto that, you
mm,
know. It's really interesting because if you think about it, the only thing that does not change and that is always certain is that there will always be change
yeah.
and always be uncertainty. And it's our capacity to embrace uncertainty rather, that dictates our level of growth and success in the world.
Hmm.
Like the more comfortable you become with discomfort, the more comfortable you become with uncertainty, the easier it is for you to excel and grow. Even right now there's some unfortunate financial chaos happening in my life that I would really rather avoid.
Hmm.
And it can feel oppressive and scary. I mean, it can feel like your whole world is about to just cave in and you're going to get sucked down with it. It can feel like that. But I feel like a big part of this is it's meant for my growth.
Mm.
And so the more that I kind of lean in on that idea, the more I am unreasonably joyful. It's there was a point in my life, and not that long ago, Don, where I tell people this. I say this in my books. There's actually a mention of this in my latest book, um, in my note at the end, um, that there was a period not long ago where I did not want to die, but if I died, I'd be okay with it.
Hmm.
And that's not necessarily a positive thing. It was the idea of if I got hit by a bus today, fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't going to end my life, and I just that's just not part of my makeup. My spiritual beliefs won't allow me to even consider that. But
Hmm.
I did not mind if something took that life, and that was a low point for me. And so it's been interesting to see what's grown from that loam, as
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
as I've shifted my perspective.
I'm drawing a blank right now on his name. Buckminster Fuller
Yeah,
just came back to me. That was a turning point in his life, if I recall, that he was at the point of contemplating ending his
yeah,
life. Wasn't going to be active about it, but he was at that point.
yeah.
And then he thought, well, if I were willing to die today, then this is in a way the beginning of a brand new life.
Right. And that is, to me, it's a profound way to come swing around on that idea, the same idea of embracing change and uncertainty as being hopeful, as being good news, right? Because you're right. Well, if you've gotten to that point where there's nothing left to lose,
Hmm.
then there's everything to gain.
Yeah.
Everything becomes opportunity. And I'm learning that expectations are kind of a weight that we tend to put on our own necks. um it's fine to have certain expectations, but like you want to have a little bit of ambition. You want to be able to say, like, you want to be able to determine your dream and then move boldly toward it, but
Hmm.
what I think we tend to do is let our lives hinge on the accomplishment of these things, and that results in unhappiness. I've read recently, The Happiness Equation.
Hmm.
And I wish I could tell you the author's name. His name is blown right out of my head right now. But
We'll get it in the show notes for people listening here.
yeah, or no, it's not The Happiness Equation. It's Solve for Happy. That's the book. Solve for Happy, and because he talks about his happiness equation. That's why I got that mixed up. But the one of the concepts he talks about is something that just hit me square in the face when I read it, which was we were born happy. There was nothing necessary for us to be happy. We would alert our parents when we were unhappy because we needed to be fed, we needed to be changed, we needed to be cuddled. But happiness was there by default. So when we say like I'm seeking joy or I'm seeking happiness, like where are you looking? It's right there with you. What we have to do is turn away from the things that make us unhappy or that rob us of joy. Not and that doesn't mean like we have to eliminate these things from our lives. It means that we have to look past them and realize like, yeah, okay, I'm sick right now. I'm out of work right now. There's this thing happening. My family member has passed away. There's all these things that have happened that I could dwell on to choose, a lack of joy or choose unhappiness, or I can acknowledge that those things are there and turn back to this innate joy that's already within me. And that was a profound shift. That was a dynamic shift in my perspective. I've been really embracing that, and embracing is an active thing. So I haven't gotten to any sort of endpoint. And you know what? I kind of pray to God that I never do get to an endpoint on embracing joy. It should be active. Joy and love should be active things in your life every day of your life.
Yeah. It makes me think of two things. One, there was a Stoic philosopher named Epictetus.
Yeah.
Who said, he said it in Greek, but the loose translation, it's not what happens to you, but what you think about what happens to you that determines your experience.
Right.
And then there was one of your shows, and we'll have this link in the show notes also, folks, but Kevin has recently revived, I guess maybe is the term, a podcast of his called Word Slinger.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who you were talking with, but you were talking about the thing about goals. And it reminded me of a book from years ago. The title of the book was Life 101. And one of the insights I got from them was the difference between mission and goals, I think was the terms that they used. And so like mission might be like west.
Yeah.
And goal from where I am would be like, okay, there's Nashville and then Memphis and then Little Rock. And eventually you can get all the way around the world.
Right.
Your goals might end, but the mission continues. If I come back to Knoxville, Tennessee, then I'm okay. I'm still going west. So now I'll go up and go through St. Louis and that kind of thing. So missions never end. Goals are achieved. And that sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah, those are waypoints, right? Like I know that I'm making progress by whether or not I can look at my goals and say, okay, I can check that box. But every day I use Apple's reminders app to organize my life, right? And every day there's a checklist, and some of these things are recurring every day, like write X amount of words, do one marketing thing, do 10 reps of with free weights or whatever. I've got a whole list of those things. And, throughout that helps me to decide what I should do next with my day. So I check one of those off as I go. But when I check them all off and I close that app at the end of the day and I go turn into bed, when I get up the next day, that whole list is back. So those are goals, but they're not the end result. Like it's not about check off all those boxes and now I'm free for the rest of my life. It's moving towards the dream that you have, whatever that dream is. It should be a continuous process. One of the things that this cracks me up, because there's a lot of little moments in my life and I don't know why they stuck, But there was a moment back in like the early 2000s, PlayStation 2 came out, and there was a game that came out on the platform called it exists on PCs and stuff, but it's called EverQuest, right? So they created a PlayStation version of EverQuest. And I remember I played it, loved it, liked it, whatever. And my good friend Jason Winscott, whom you will hear me talk about from time to time, we were having a conversation one day. He and I were both sort of in this game, obsessed with the game. And I said, I really like this game, but it never, there's no like end point. There's nothing to really, like, you're just constantly growing as a character, but you're never really winning the game. And he looked at me and, like, one of the most profound moments of my life, he said, well, it is called EverQuest. And I think about that moment all the time. Like, that's life, right? Like, we get so focused on, I know I do. Listener, viewer, maybe you don't, but I mean, I get so focused on, like, I haven't gotten to this goal yet. And that makes me feel like crap, and it makes me feel like I'm a failure. It makes me feel, weighted down and exhausted. But when I stop thinking about that in those terms and think instead, I've done this today, I've accomplished this, I've reached this level, and just kind of, I just sort of embrace that EverQuest. I mean, that journey forward. I just enjoy the game rather than lamenting that I haven't won it.
Yeah.
Like, what would winning it mean? Like, what? There's a whole adage about, like, the idea is you're climbing the mountain is the point. Reaching the top of the mountain means there's nowhere left to go but back down again. Mm-hmm. So I want an eternal mountain. I want, and that means sometimes struggle, and that means running out of oxygen, getting snowblind, breaking a leg. I mean, it means that sometimes there's going to be things that I don't like on the journey, but if I reach the top, then I'm done with it, and being done with it isn't the point.
Well, and I wonder, see if this resonates with you where you are in your life right now. You get to the top of a given mountain, and then you notice, wow, there are other mountains over there.
Yeah. And that's another approach to life. Like, you can look at your life as being the mountain, or you can look at your life as being the mountain range. And if your goal is, I'm going to conquer every mountain, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to look and see what else there is down there, and then I'm going to go do that. That's perfectly fine too. That's really the same idea, honestly, when it comes down to it. Like, it's the same concept, but.
And there will be times, if you're spotting that next mountain, there will be a little time that you have to go down this mountain in order to start going up the next one.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot out of this metaphor, but I think it's a useful.
Oh, I'll squeeze this metaphor into the biggest container of lemonade you've ever seen. I stole the whole mountain thing from Neil Gaiman. He did that speech for College of the Arts in 2012, which, if you have not seen, you definitely should go see, no matter whether you want to be a writer or whatever it is you want to do with your life. But, that's the way he described his career. Was, I always saw my career as a mountain. Now he's talking about moving toward the mountain, not climbing the mountain. And I like that. I like that better, because, this path toward that destination is, it's going to take turns. You're going to come to points where the road is closed and you got to veer off, and you got to, trounce through the muck and mud on the side of the road for a little while and step back on. And, there's a lot of there. I love metaphors, by the way, but there's a lot to this journey that is unpredictable, that maybe looks like it could be predictable. And then you end up, like, how many times have you been driving or taking a trail or something, and you've got your destination ahead, and then suddenly it just veers off to the right or left, and you're like, okay, but is it gonna come back, or am I lost forever? And you know what? I'm trying to get to a point in my life where I'm embracing being lost. Like, what are you really lost? Like, when we were in the van, we would decide one day. Like there were times where we would get to a campground we had booked in advance, and we'd get there and we'd be like, that place is a little sketchy, or I'm not feeling it, or you know what, I got another 4 hours in me, and we would just cancel our reservation and go on to the next place, and just with the faith that we would find something, and we always did. And so we were lost on purpose, and
Yeah.
being lost on purpose meant that everything was part of the plan. Everything became part of the journey, and we discovered things we would never ever have found had we not just been driving randomly to get to a new place. And that's what I want my life to be.
Yeah. It's sort of like writing a novel. You didn't realize that character was going to show up,
Yeah.
but now that the character's there, we'll work him in.
Right. Yeah. That happens in my writing a lot, actually.
Yeah. Well, I can relate to that. We've all probably heard the idea that most of us overestimate what we can accomplish in the short term and underestimate what we can accomplish in the long term.
Yeah.
It struck me recently that means that if at a certain point of our life we look back over our lives, we may be surprised at what we have accomplished.
Yeah.
Do you, and I don't know how old you are, which decade you're in or whatever, but as I look at what I know about you, I think, wow, all the things that Kevin has done. Do you get that sense looking back at your own life ever?
I mean, first of all, I'm 51.
Okay.
And
And I
so I've
would
been
have guessed
around.
40s, and so
A lot of people,
you're young
yeah,
at
a lot
heart.
of people guess younger, which I like. That's why I tell people how old I am, so that they'll guess younger. Looking back on my life, what's interesting is this is a new development in my life as well. Is this notion of looking back, or looking at my life to see what I actually have accomplished and produced, rather than lamenting what I thought I should have, or where I thought I should be. You can make yourself a loser in your head. It is not difficult, and I do it to myself frequently. It's a bad habit I'm trying to overcome. And when I stop and look back, though, like how many people have gotten to do even half of the things that I've done in the past 3 years, Don. I mean, 3 years of my life as a cross section, I have done things that I know people who would give almost anything to be able to do those things. And so isn't that remarkable how mundane that becomes to us once we've done it?
You're always in the middle of your own life, I guess.
Yeah. But the profundity of it for me is there was a point in my life where I looked forward and said, man, I really want to do that. I can't wait to do that. And then there was that moment when that happened. And then there's all the moments afterwards where I'm like, that's no big deal. I did that. Yeah. And so isn't that interesting? Like, why can't I look back at those things with that same profound sense as I had looking forward to them? And I think that is part of the lesson of life, is that's what we want to aim to try to do. We don't want to be lodged in the past. Like, we don't want to yearn for the past, because that's just death. The past is gone, but it lives on in our present moment.
Yeah.
We can celebrate all those things and use those things as fuel for going forward. But don't forget about right now. Right now is the part that matters. Is this like internal now that we live in? Let's get a little woo for a second, Don. We live in this eternal moment, right? That is constantly the focus of our awareness. But if you want to experience depression and sadness, linger on your past. If you want to experience anxiety and dread, linger on your future. If you want to experience joy and happiness, linger on what's happening right now. And it's a difficult lesson. It's a very difficult thing to do. And I think that's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So in that spirit, I don't want to I don't want to dwell too much on those 3 years, but for folks who don't know you, I do want to note what I know during that time. First of all, let's put into context real quick these
Yeah.
statistics that I came across just generally. Once again, the last couple of days, that a survey done in 2002, I'm assuming they were talking mostly to Americans, but they
Yeah.
were asking, you ever want to write a book? And 81% of respondents said yes.
Yeah.
15% of those people started a book. 6% got halfway through. 3% completed the book. And 0.6% managed to publish. And we're just talking about a book.
Yeah.
And just one little segment of your life. I'm going to go ahead and bring up your website here. First of all, because I want folks to be able to find it. And then secondly, just so we can look at something on here. I knew you had written a lot. This is where I stole the bio from, by the way.
Yeah.
But, let's see. Where, up here at the top, books.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Forgotten Rune.
Yeah.
I guess that's the newest one coming out. But the Dan Cotter archaeological thrillers. I'm scrolling through here, folks, just so you can kind of see, those of you who are on screen, those of you who are listening audio only. There's at least 9 Dan Kotler books. The Quake
13
Runner
total.
series. Say again?
There's 13 Dan Kotler full-length novels out now with Forgotten Rune.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And here's Quake Runner, Alex Kane, historic crime crossovers, couple of those, Evergreen series, couple of those, Jim Riker thrillers, co-authored with Nick Thacker.
Yeah.
Citadel.
I owe him another one of those.
Yeah. And I mean, these are thrillers and archaeological thrillers. Then we've got science fiction.
Yeah. Those were my first books, Citadel.
Really?
The first books I published. Yeah.
So, and you said a little earlier, I'm continuing to scroll here as we're talking about it. By the way, I see this think tank thing. I saw something I think you enjoy, play on words. Somebody said, yeah, I work for a think tank. And the guy he's talking to says, oh, those scare me. Oh, what do you mean? Well, smart cars, they're bad enough, but think tanks are dangerous.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. And short fiction, as if you didn't have enough to do. And then there's nonfiction, serving the author community, as you talked about. KevinTumlinson.com. That's TUM. First time I heard your name, I thought it was Tomlinson.
Yeah, I get that
a lot. Kevin, TUMLINSON, KevinTumlinson.com. Just the books alone, you have accomplished so much more than the average person. Radio, podcasting. If I had casually come across you, I would probably think you were primarily a podcaster.
Right.
Worked with corporate the last few years. Draft Digital, a company that many of us know and love. You were the voice of them, the podcaster of them. You had corporate responsibilities there.
Yeah.
Recently, you took on the CEO position of a related company.
Yeah.
And left it after 4 months. And I commend you for that, because what I think I see you doing is what the Alignment Show is all about. Here we are, by the way, 45 minutes into what's supposed to be a 30-minute program. And we're just now getting to this.
That's a typical Kevin Tumlinson interview.
Yeah. But I mean, it took, it took courage or insight or whatever to get into something new like that, and then to realize, if I can relate to my own experience, some years back at the college where I teach, I had the opportunity to take on some administrative responsibilities, which I did for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I was good at, but I didn't like it. And I realized I needed to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
And that was not for me. Thank God somebody does that. Was that what, without getting into details, was that kind of what happened with you moving to that CEO thing? And you're saying, okay, this is robbing me of the time to write.
Yeah. It's, first of all, I want to say hi to Buddy Gott, who just popped in. I love Buddy. Hey, man. And so it was interesting because at that time there was there were things that happened. There were some negative things that happened that caused me to rethink my where I was and what I wanted my career to look like and what I was doing. But really, there was nothing so negative that I just threw up my hands and walked away from like Draft to Digital or whatever. I knew I was in a different place, and I was feeling like I had put my books on the back burner. I kind of let things slide there. The opportunity to be CEO was one of those that's like, how often do you get asked to be CEO of a company? So I felt like I was obligated to take it. But almost from the moment that I stepped into that role, I mean, first of all, it became pretty clear pretty quick that um, the founder, and I love him, but he was not prepared to let someone else take the reins of that his baby, and
Mhm.
that was part of it. But I had come to grips with that. I was living with that. But as time went on, it became obvious that there was a different alignment of values, and I started paying attention to the things I was saying because I kept saying things like, what I really want is to do something more creative. I really want to get back to creative work and do less, I want to focus less on marketing and more on creative. I still want to serve this company. I've obligated myself, but it became clear that, I got the message. Like I was telling myself that whole time, this wasn't what I wanted. And, and I think that, we came to this like place where we agreed amicably that, I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think we both
Mhm.
benefited. I think the company benefited. I think it's the authors that company serves benefited. But I, I took my out and just went back to writing and creating full time. Um, that's had some ups and some downs, but it is definitely a journey that's been enriching to me, and I've seen growth in my life, spiritually and otherwise. But the yeah, that's I may have meandered from the question, honestly, Don, but
You're spot on.
the whole thing is, um, I I came to this point where I realized, like, if this is what I want, if I want to be a full time writer, there's nothing preventing me from doing that. You know, um, I'm having to paddle a little more harder than I had wanted, but I've gained so much from this, and so burn the boats and do it.
Yeah.
That was the thing, and whatever happens, happens. If things don't go as well as I want them to, and I have to take another role somewhere, then at least I can look back at this moment and say, man, I did it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't just talk about it. I risked it all and did it. And that that whole idea of change and uncertainty, looking at that as hope rather than as something to fear, man, that's not an easy thing, but that's what I've chosen to do,
Yeah.
and so that's where I am.
It really struck me in what you sent me an email. You said, "I'm a writer
Yeah,
first and foremost, and most of all, everything else in my career takes the sidecar now."
that's exactly that's exactly the way I chose to present it to myself and to the world, and I've lived it. And for anyone watching this, here's the thing, all this stuff is scary, and I believe in a kind of magic in the universe. I believe in God, and I believe that everything we do, you know, is divinely guided in one fashion or another. You're never promised that there won't be pain and suffering in your life. In fact, you're promised just the opposite
Yeah.
of that. But the what I realized is like the pain and suffering, the uncertainty, the fear, all that is absolutely a price worth paying to know that you're choosing to live. And that's where I am. That's where I every day I have to wake up and remind myself of that. So I want to talk to the people who are watching and listening that are feeling that fear and suffering in that way. I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to it. Don't let anyone downplay it, but the truth is you are going to be okay, and choosing to just march forward into the wind, despite the debris flying in your face and the rain pouring down on you and the lightning and the thunder. That is what makes you amazing and brave. And if you can't do that, don't feel like you're not amazing and brave. Just know that you're doing, just do the thing you are capable of doing in that moment, and be happy and satisfied with that.
Mm. I can see where you're focused on writing hopeful fiction. I think that's why
That's my goal.
we
Yeah.
read thrillers. You know,
Yeah.
there's that sense of hope that it can be dealt with.
Yeah.
Or
I want my books to inspire people to come to that idea. Like, even when things are at their darkest, even if we die, we can still be a light. And what's the worst that's going to happen? We dying isn't even the worst thing I could imagine happening
it's going to
to
happen at
myself.
some point anyway.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but
Right.
what's the line from Braveheart? You know, every man dies, not every man lives.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and I'm a little sexist expression maybe, but you know, the principle is certainly true for all of us. Or
Yeah.
as Microsoft might say, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's the way you want to live. Live
yeah,
your life as a feature. Live,
exactly.
every day, everything that comes at you. You don't have to like any of it. You don't have to smile in the face of all of it all the time. Things can suck.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the thing is, though, it's back to that idea from solving for happy. It's like your joy, your happiness, it's there anyway.
hmm,
What are you letting distract you from it? So, if I end up living on the street and eating garbage and, you know, uh, sleeping under a bridge every night, then at least I got there honestly, And the thing is, though, I know me. Like, those worries, those fears are ridiculous because I know me. Like, I'm the
hmm,
guy who, when I had nothing else to work with, started writing books. You can go to the public library and sit in front of a computer and write and
yeah.
publish. So, and if you can do that with no money out of your hands, is it uncomfortable? Are you going to be a little hungry? These things happen, but there's always a way, always. And I think what we do is get locked into this fear that this is it. It's all over. All my options are gone. And the reality is, you're back to that idea. It's like, if I'm down at the lowest point of my life, then the all that's left for me is to go back up. And I think that's the way we should all live.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Well, we are so much overtime, but it's so
yeah,
worth it.
sorry
I
about
do
that.
want to go. No, no, no. It's because it's me continuing to dig, man. This is a great conversation. I'm going to put the website up one more time because we want to focus on that latest book. I'm seeing a May 15th date, I
May
think.
15th.
Did I get that right? The
Yeah,
Forgotten
that's it.
Rune. And you publish wide, I believe. Am I right about
I
that?
do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good
Big
old
believer
graphic
in
digital.
wide.
Yeah, yeah. And so the Forgotten Rune, folks, you can watch for it. And we're going to have a lot of show notes, a lot of links in our show notes, so you'll be able to come back to this also. I see where there's a click here to order. Is that through your store or pre-order, or what do we got there?
You click that link and you're going to go to Draft Digital's books to read link for that. Yeah.
There we are. Yeah, I
And right
love
now,
that.
because it's only on pre-order, it's only on those 4 shops. But you know, if it's
That's one of the
after
great.
May 15th, you'll see a lot more shops there.
Yeah, that's one of the great things with books to read is more places become available. They just show up here
Yeah.
automatically. So
Yeah.
yeah, very good. All righty. And one of my favorite questions to ask Kevin is always this is going to be weird, I guess, in this context, because really we've got at least another hour we could talk here.
Oh yeah.
But there's probably something that you wish that I had asked about that I didn't. what would that be, and what would your answer to it be?
Oh my gosh. Put me on the spot. Dangerous to ask me an open-ended question at the end of a show running over. I guess I really don't have a prepared answer for that, but I if you were going to ask me about anything, I guess asking me about podcasting would have been
Oh
interesting.
yeah, and I mean
Yeah,
that's a big gap here because
that's a big one. That's
how many
a
podcasts are you currently doing? I mean,
right now I've whittled things down. I'm doing three total officially. I'm doing my show, the Wordslinger podcast. I'm doing Writers Inc. with JD Barker and Christine Daigle and Jenna Brown. The cast keeps changing on that one, and I'm sort of the host. It's hard to describe my role in this, but I'm the host of the Author Nation podcast with Joe Solari in the upcoming. Well, it's actually called State of the Nation Author Nation, something like that. Sorry, Joe, I will butcher that every time it comes up. But
well, and we'll
he
get it in the show notes there.
yeah,
But
he took over the 20 Books to Vegas conferences and rebranding it Author Nation, and I was immediately excited to be a part of that. So yeah, but I've been a host or co-host on 100+ shows easily. I've been on thousands of podcasts. Podcasting is a big part of my. I don't know why it became so, but podcasting has always been a big part of my career.
well, and run this by you, even though we're running over. When I was in the National Speakers Association some years ago, they used to say, "Don't call yourself a writer or a speaker or whatever.
Mhm.
You call yourself an expert in X who
Mm,
uses writing and podcasting and courses and websites and you know
yeah,
whatever channel in order to get my expertise out there." I
yeah.
would tweak that now maybe and say I'm a creator. Does that
I,
seem to fit
that is
you?
part of my. If you look at you had my little logo at some point, like a QR code or something. But that logo bills me as a writer and creator, and I
Yeah,
write daily affirmations. Yeah, so creator's getting covered a little by that, but it's there.
yeah,
I write these daily affirmations where I actually proclaim those two things about myself every single day, in writing and out loud. And yeah, being a creator it fills in the rest of the bio because I'm a writer first and foremost, and as you said, but on top of that, or as part of that, or under that umbrella, I'm a creator. I do my own covers. I do podcasts. I do video. I do, any way that I can create that meets my mission statement is something I do. So
excellent, excellent. Kevin, it has been so wonderful to have you on the show.
I
I
appreciate it, Don. Yeah, thank you.
know you even more deeply. I encourage everybody to check out your stuff, whether you are seeking a good fiction read or inspiration or how to. If you want to learn more about writing, there's a lot of good stuff that Kevin has out there. I'm going to put you in the green room for just a second so I can thank you properly in a moment.
You got
But
it.
again, thank you for being here on the show.
Anytime, Don. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So, folks, coming up next week, we don't really know right now. I've got one of those unusual gaps in the schedule. May the 3rd, we'll have a guest on or perhaps a solo show. I'm not certain. There are a number of folks who have said, anytime that you have an opening, I would be happy to come on. We'll contact some of those folks. But I'm sure that it will be something that will help you in your journey. After all, that's what we're here for on the Alignment Show. Remember that you can get to the show notes at confidencecultivators.com. I always emphasize that last S. So, confidencecultivators.com. You can find out links about today's episode. You can, what else? You can find out about upcoming guests. Support the show. I always forget to ask people, go review us, give us some reviews. It helps other people to benefit from what we do here. But in any case, as we wrap up this week's show, got to get to the right clicky thing here. This has been a wonderful interview. I thank you for staying with us through a longer episode. I think you will agree it was worthwhile. And we'll be back next week with the Alignment Show as we help you to live your values so that you can value your life. That's it for this week's episode of the Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.